I have the honor this morning of introducing and welcoming my friend and colleague from the Interfaith Council of Monrovia, Jason Moss. We have known each other for probably a good 10 plus years now and worked together on a number of items over the years, and thought it would be a wonderful opportunity this Sunday to share his wisdom and his insight from his tradition about our readings this morning. So, Jason, please welcome to our lectern. He is also, by the way, the director of the Jewish Federation of the San Gabriel and Pomona Valleys.
If you were to walk into my office at the Jewish Federation, you'd see several things on the walls. Next to the pictures of my family, a framed photo of a mezuzah on one of the entryways into Jerusalem, a collage poster of various Israeli street signs I took when I was last there leading a community trip in 2012. And you would also see a poster that captures some of Mickey Mouse's most iconic cartoons. You see, I've always been a fan of Disney, especially the old animated movies. While some of my favorites include Sword in the Stone, Robin Hood, Peter Pan, and Winnie the Pooh, the one I appreciate the most is Pinocchio. The overarching themes and lessons from these movies helped shape who I am today. My favorite character in Pinocchio is Jiminy Cricket. He understood right from wrong and did his very best to provide Pinocchio the moral guidance he felt Pinocchio needed. Unfortunately, Pinocchio wasn't able to grasp this information of these lessons until it was very late. Or it may have been that Pinocchio was not willing to open himself up to the way a real boy should be. 85 years later, the message of "let your conscience be your guide" still rings true even today. As I was thinking about the sermon I wanted to share with you this morning, this idea of following a path forward, of how we should live our lives, having a moral guide pushing us forward, something that I believe all religious traditions teach, seem to be an extremely relevant and important thing with today's readings. Since I am much more familiar with the Hebrew Bible, the part viewed by Christianity as the Old Testament, I'm going to spend most of my focus on the reading from Genesis. Similar to the Episcopal Church, the great sages of Judaism, nearly 1,700 years ago, decided to break the Torah up into weekly portions, parshot in Hebrew, as a way for Jews to read and study a small section each week, ultimately covering the entire Torah over the course of the year. So let me set the stage of what was happening prior to the passage from Genesis chapter 15. The Torah portion that this week's reading comes from is called Lech Lecha. It is in this section that we are first introduced to Abram, who would become the forefather of the three monotheistic religions and whose name would be changed by God to Abraham. I want to share with you a song written by Debbie Friedman, a leading Jewish American songwriter who came to prominence in the 1970s and early 80s, and for many captured the essence of Jewish teachings and songs that are considered standards in the Jewish world. The song is called Lechi Lach. Lechi Lach, to a land that I will show you. Lech Lecha, to a place you do not know. Lechi Lach, on your journey I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing. Lechi Lach, Lechi Lach. I shall make your name great. Lech lecha, and all shall praise your name. Lech ilach, to the place that I will show you. Lesimchat chayim, lesimchat chayim, lesimchat chayim, lechilach. So here is Abram, minding his own business, and he hears a voice. A voice, I might add, that he most likely had never heard before. And not only was God talking to him, but God was commanding him to leave. Go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. No, hey Abram, it's me, Adonai. No, how's it going? What are you planning to eat for dinner tonight? How about this weather? None of this. Just go. But as an enticement, God continues by saying, I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. Before I continue, I want you to try and imagine what that must have been like for Abram. What must have been going through his mind? Do you think he told anyone? If so, what would he say? Can you imagine what people's reaction would have been had he told them? The Yiddish word that comes to my mind is meshuggah, crazy. What God was asking Abram to do was to make a huge leap of faith. Just for a minute, try and put yourself in Abram's shoes and be honest with yourself. Could you do it? Could you leave a place and everything you've ever known because an idea, a command, was whispered in your ear? If you were called, could you decide in that moment? And would it define who you are going to be? Could you have that much blind faith? I'm not sure I would have been brave enough or have the moral fortitude to do it. Thankfully, Abram was able and did take this leap of faith. And whether it was because of all that God was offering or because he just felt it was something he had to do, he left. Now, don't get me wrong. What he was offered is pretty incredible stuff. Number one, God said that he would make Abram a great nation. And two, God would bless those who bless him and curse those who curse him. I'm of the belief that Abram made the leap not because of what God offered, but rather he did it because he had faith and he felt it was the right thing to do. Even though he was going to head to a place he did not know, he believed in God and that God would protect and bless him along his journey. For some people, they need proof. They need something concrete before they will do something out of their comfort zone. They won't take a trip unless they have the directions, reviewed recommendations on Yelp, and planned out their entire trip. From when they would get up, right up to when they leave. This doesn't make their path wrong by any stretch of the imagination. The fact that they are on the path, that they believe, is what is important. Our world has been through a lot these last several years. From the rise of hate and animosity that has plagued society to an actual plague, COVID, that we just marked the 5-year anniversary of officially being considered a pandemic this past week, to not treating everyone with the dignity and respect we all deserve. After all, according to the first chapter of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, God created mankind in God's image. In Hebrew, it's called B'Tselem Elohim. And while at times things have felt out of control, and we have felt uncertain about what the road ahead would look like, our traditions have had an answer for all of us all along. If we follow God's teachings, the rules and laws laid out for us in our biblical texts, whether they are found in the Hebrew Bible, the Gospels, or other holy texts, they are a path forward that we have to choose whether we will follow. Rather than see them as things we have to do, things we must obey, we need to look at them as opportunities and suggested ideas that we should follow. In fact, our ancestors have been using these guides for hundreds of years. One would have to think that if this path led them to a dead end, or worse, into a path of destruction, our religions would have died out a long time ago. And yet, they have not. So we must ask ourselves why more of us don't follow the path laid out for us. The fact is, the blueprint of how to live our life, the reason we were created, has been in front of us the whole time. It is a list of do's and do-nots, the way we should treat one another, the way to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. If we were just to follow the blueprint, according to our traditions, the game of life, not the board game, but rather the time we have on earth, could be won, or at least lead us to the end in the easiest way possible. And even with this path laid out before us, we, as humans, have struggled. But it is important to remember our ancestors and everyone who has come before us have faltered. They've lost their way and questioned their faith and made mistakes. And yet they continued their journey, and they chose to get back on the path and follow the teachings, even if it led them to a place they did not know. We have the same choice to make each day when we wake up in the morning. And it is only our choice to make. No one can make it for us. We have to decide how we treat other people, how we choose to live our life. Ultimately, we are not judged on what other people choose to do. We are only judged on the choices we make and the way we lead our life. And just like Abram, who did not know what he was getting himself into, when he left his father's home and followed God, uncertain of where it would lead him, we too have a decision to make. And we have to live with the outcome of the choices we make, without the knowledge of how things will play out. We are the ones that have to live with the choices we make. It would be so much easier if each of us had our own Jiminy Cricket walking through life by our side. Oh, wait, we do. But it is not a talking and singing cricket in a top hat, coat with tails, and an umbrella. It is the moral compass our traditions teach us and suggest we use to guide our way. Whether we follow what in Jewish tradition teaches us and is referred to as Yetzer HaTov, the good inclination, or Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. It is up to us to decide.